and he's kept going ever since. The love of racing is in his blood, and he's totally committed to that love. Toby, mate, all the pain you've had to go through, all the injuries and the loss of your loved ones, all the pain, it never stopped you. We've been through so much on our racing journey together, the highs and the lows, and we live to race another day. I'm grateful for all the time we've spent together, and I'm looking forward to all the times to come. One day we'll be old retired fellas, and we'll look back over the years, happy with everything we've accomplished, and we'll have a good laugh. Toby, my dear friend, you are a true champion, a loyal friend, and an inspiration to us all. 1. Roto. Roto. You've probably never heard of it, and I don't blame you. It's not small, quite the opposite, but it's incredibly isolated and unpopulated. A vast expanse of land over 700 kilometres west of Sydney. It's a pretty insignificant place for most people, I suppose. But in the early 1980s, it was the centre of the universe for my parents, John and Pauline Price. Both of my parents came from rural areas and understood the bush. My dad, John, grew up in Harden-Murrum Borough in the southwest slopes area, where he lived until his career in banking took him to Moss Vale in the Southern Highlands. My mum, Pauline, grew up in Mittagong, 20-odd kilometres from Moss Vale, and trained to be a nurse. In 1975, their paths crossed, they hit it off, and more than 4 decades later, they're still together. A few years into their life as a married couple, John and Pauline received a fascinating offer. A doctor at the hospital Mum worked at was looking at buying a farm out at Roto, but he didn't want to put his money on the line unless there were people he could trust to go out there and run it. So the opportunity was presented to Mum and Dad and Mum's brother Jeff and his wife Diane. The place was pretty run down, and the doctor wanted a 5-year commitment from whoever took on the project. He didn't want somebody to go out there, freak out and pull the pin a few months later. It was a huge call for my folks. They just built a brand new brick home in Mittagong. My brother Matthew was a baby and my sister Amanda was on the way. They'd been brought up in rural areas, but neither of them were born and bred farmers. But they decided to commit to the 5 years and give it a go. Obviously, they didn't know it at the time. I wasn't even born, but that decision set me on my career path. The move to Roto took a little longer than expected for my parents. There were a lot of loose ends to tie up in Mittagong, and when Amanda arrived a lot earlier than expected, that further complicated things. So my grandparents, Alan and Margaret, moved out to Roto first. Jeff and Diane followed a year later, and I finally arrived another year or so after that. Life out in Roto wasn't for the faint-hearted, particularly in the early days. The property was 42,000 acres of cattle and sheep farm, sprawling across the Western Country. When my folks first got out there was no running water. Water itself was a scarce commodity, hot water even more so. Having a hot shower meant lighting a fire under a 44-gallon drum filled with water. There were snakes and spiders everywhere. There was no electricity, food was stored in kerosene fridges. It wasn't until 1986, a year before I was born, that the property got electricity for the first time. The nearest neighbours were Jeff and Diane, who lived on a separate homestead on the same property 7 kilometres away. Adding to the challenge was that Amanda, having been born premature, required significant care, something that I'll expand on later. That move to Roto was an incredibly daunting task for my folks, but they loved it. They could quickly envisage the childhood it could provide for us kids. The whole family learnt to appreciate what they had and make the best of it. A few years into the stint at Roto, I hit the scene, and from the word go, I just couldn't sit still. The 2.5 metre high fence around the homestead suddenly wasn't big enough. I was the complete opposite to Matthew. If my parents gave him a toy, he'd sit there and play quietly for hours. If they tried the same with me, I'd be out the door as soon as they turned their backs. I was a nightmare for my poor parents. When I was 18 months old, I decided to climb this big tree in our front yard. Getting up there was easy, but I quickly realised I didn't know how to get down. Mum came out to hang the washing and could hear me calling, but couldn't work out where I was. She eventually looked up and there I was, 8 metres in the air.